This is an English B video, and here I just want to summarize my experience with English B and maybe share a few tips and tricks which helped me in my exams and during the mocks. So these things are more about last minute preparation and not about studying consistently throughout the whole year. So it's more about the approach towards the exams, how to understand the questions better, how to structure your answer, how to start writing, and not about how to consistently train yourself throughout the year. And the reason for that is that I had a great teacher and I didn't really have to prepare myself much outside of homework and outside of class. So these are just more about time management and how to structure your answers. But I hope it still proves helpful. I need to say that each person is different and these things that work for me might not work for you, of course, so just stick to whatever works for you, I guess. I also don't know if I have the right to give those tips and tricks and advice because I don't even know if I scored well yet, but I was getting grades I was pleased with during the years, so as I discovered, not all of the text types are in the textbook. There are such text types which are never mentioned in the textbook and which can really come up on your real exam. For example, on my exam it was an article. What I did was that I married two text types which I did know a lot about. I knew a lot about how to write a blog because I wrote a blog in all of my past mocks, and I knew a lot about how to write a news report. So I kind of married the two to get an article. So it's kind of in the middle because a blog is too informal and a news report is too formal. To be on the safe side, my advice to you is that before the exam you look on the ThinkIB website, which has all of the important key features of all the text types that can come up. Really, it's much better to just skim through the ThinkIB website because it's generally not a good place to study, but for English B, I think it's the best resource you can get. So, quick side note, I think that those text types that are on the ThinkIB website but are not in the textbook are really text types that are kind of intuitive. I mean, everybody has written an email or a diary entry or a newspaper article, for example, for the school newspaper in their lives. And it's kind of easy to write those text types even if you have never seen their official key features before. So really, I think it's best to prepare yourself with the textbook first. So another thing I recommend you to do is look at the mark scheme seriously. First I thought that the mark scheme was full of boring, unnecessary, repetitive information, but I was mistaken. The mark scheme is possibly the most useful thing you will ever get your hands on. If you do have a mark scheme, please look at it. It's treasure, it's gold. Because the most important thing a mark scheme has is hidden at the last page of the mark scheme. It's section C appendix. And in this section there are 3 bullet points for each text type you can encounter, and in these bullet points there are the key features. And those are the most important key features the examiners actively look for when they are checking your essay. So make sure to include those in your writing. A benefit of the mark scheme is that it's much shorter than your usual table with key features in the textbook. The mark scheme usually includes about 3 bullet points for each text type, and if you look in the textbook, there are these long, really long tables with key features, which I find is very difficult to memorize. The best part about paper 1 English exam is that you are already given everything in the prompt. You don't have to imagine a whole mind-blowing structure. Everything is already given to you. You just have to find it and use it. For example, in this prompt you have to first describe one source of carbon emissions within your city, then present measures to reduce the pollution it causes, and third, explain why the measures would benefit the population. So what do you do next? What I always start with is that I make a small mind map to each of the key words in the prompt. So for example, here you have carbon emissions, measures to reduce pollution, and why the measures will benefit the population. So anything you will think of, just write it down Don't think about it, don't criticize it, just write anything at all. So the second step is that you um, structure this mind map according to the structure that you're given. So you write out the structure with these bullet points 1, 2, 3, and then you just surround it with key thoughts which you picked up in your brainstorming. So this way you will have kind of like a thought bank of thoughts for each key step of your structure. So the important thing is that you do not overlook some point. It's important that you write around an equal amount of stuff for each point you have. You can straighten some points, but if one of your points is underdeveloped, it will not bring you high marks. Next, you have to actually start writing your text, and that's the most difficult thing in my opinion. And what I really get stuck on is the first paragraph. What's really useful is that you do not write the headline, because it's often difficult. Instead, just blurt out the first thing you think. You can always just put a line for it later if you don't like it. Just start writing anything. From experience, the first thought you have often sounds silly, and I personally just like to spend like 10 minutes thinking about the first paragraph, or one time on the mocks I spent 40 minutes writing just the first two paragraphs, and it's a waste of time really. Just start writing. That's the most important thing. I usually write the headline when I actually finish the paper. It's the last thing I do usually. I'm not saying that it's the best way, but it just helps me to really start writing. So I think a great thing about paper one is that you can twist the prompt whichever way you want. So you can use your imagination to the full. So for example, if you have to write about carbon emissions, you can make the task actually easier. You can write that you are living in some ecological murder, where like no person thinks about ecology whatsoever. Because if you write about some ecological utopia, you will not be able to write about carbon emissions and how you can make the population feel better. A lot of marks in paper one are for your knowledge of English, so for your vocabulary and for your grammar, and also for your use of idiomatic expressions. So how do you do this? I think that the best way to do this is to read lots of books in English. For example, I did it with a pocket book, and a good feature of a pocket book is that you can instantly translate words. So another thing is that you should use books for idioms. I used this book, for example, and it was great. Um, my strategy was that before the mock I would open the book at a random page and choose two items. I would try to just use them in the exam. Another thing people struggle with is grammar, and to fix your grammar I would suggest also using Lingvaleo, because there are lots of great resources for your grammar training, and it's also very fun. It's not like just boring exercises in the book. I used this book to train grammar, and the best feature of this book is that it includes exercises from all areas of grammar. Another thing I did to train grammar was that I made a mind map for each of the tenses, so I really tried to understand what is past perfect continuous, how is it really different from past perfect or present perfect. Additionally, to practice your writing, I recommend writing a diary in English, or just generally try to communicate with somebody you know in English. For example, I had a friend with whom I spoke in English only at certain places in the house or at certain places in the city. So I think those are the main things you should focus on when training for paper one. I found out that I was reading texts wrong all the time. What I did was that I first read the text for just basic understanding, and then I read the text a second time when looking at the questions in the paper you're giving. It's wrong, and I lost a lot of time when I did it, and I think a much better way is to first read the text and answer questions parallelly. It may be hard at first, but you will get the hang of it really soon, and it does save a lot of time, because both times I did it, I came out of the exam 20 minutes earlier. My personal issue with listening is that I tend to just daydream and fall asleep. And when I think that I understand the question, I really don't understand the question. I have just read it and the sense escaped me. So what I tend to do is that I draw small icons near the questions which communicate the main sense of the question. Or I may just write out keywords from the question. For example, if the question asks like what types of dresses are forbidden at this school, I will write dress and stop. So instead of reading 7 or 10 words, I need to read two to understand what the question is about. And this is really important because when you're listening, you don't want to reread the question because that will mean you will miss a part of the conversation. So this has been really useful. Also, you may draw small people or small things next to the questions because to understand a picture takes a lot less time than understanding words.